Hey friends, welcome back for another video. I hope you guys are as excited as I am for today's video because as you can see, I've got two pretty big boxes sitting here behind me, and unfortunately they are open because I did start to record this book haul and the audio didn't work out. So this is take two, but I think we can still have a ton of fun going through all the books that I've got in my boxes. Now, these boxes are from Book Outlet. They recently had a huge $5.99 sale, but not all the books in here were hauled from Book Outlet. So I do have some stuff that's been ordered from other places or bought at Barnes & Noble. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started on the book haul. Now, I won't give a synopsis for all of them, but for some of the books that I think maybe you wouldn't have as much of an idea about what they're about, or ones that really I was hooked in by the synopsis, I will share that with you. That way, if you're intrigued, maybe you can add it to your physical TBR as well. But that being said, let's get right into it. So the first book I have here is The Will of the Many, which I feel like you have to have been living under a rock if you haven't heard about this, or maybe we just have very different reading taste and For You pages. But this book has been all over my For You page and I have been wanting to read it so bad. And I was in a local bookstore and I saw this copy and I decided I wanted to go ahead and pick it up. So I will be getting into this very soon. And just to give you a brief overview, The Will of the Many is about a hierarchy where individuals that have the most will rule the world and are kind of in charge of the society. I thought this sounded really, really interesting, and I'm really excited to learn how this system of will has been crafted and how that lends itself to the hierarchy that's formed in this book. So I think we're starting off super strong with this as the first book in our book haul. Now, I also picked up Wisteria. This is the third book in this series, so I won't give you the synopsis as I don't want to give anything away about the series, but I do have the other two books in this series and I just couldn't resist picking up the third one as well. Now, this isn't from Target. I did get this from Book Outlet, but it does unfortunately have these Target stickers on it, which are always so hard to get off of the book. So if you have any tips, let me know because I hate scratching up my dust jackets, but picked up that third book in the series. And I also picked up The Vampires of El Norte, and this one just sounded really interesting to me. I personally wasn't too familiar with it, but the cover really intrigued me, and then once I read the synopsis, I felt like this would be really interesting, so I will share that with you. As the daughter of a rancher in 1840s Mexico, Nina knows a thing or two about monsters. Her home has long been threatened by tensions with Anglo settlers from the north, but something more sinister lurks near the ranch at night, something that drains men of their blood and leaves them for dead. Something that once attacked Nina 9 years ago. Believing Nina dead, Nestor has been on the run from his grief ever since, moving from ranch to ranch working as a vaquero. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I will definitely look up the correct pronunciation because I think if he's working as a vaquero, that word is going to be used frequently throughout the book. But anyways, but no amount of drink can dispel the night terrors of sharp teeth. No woman can erase his childhood sweetheart from his mind. When the United States invades Mexico in 1846, the two are brought abruptly together on the road to war. Nina as a healer striving to prove her worth to her father so that he does not marry her off to a stranger, and Nestor as a member of the auxiliary cavalry of ranchers and vaqueros. But the shock of their reunion and Nina's rage at Nestor for seemingly abandoning her long ago is quickly overshadowed by the appearance of a nightmare made flesh. And unless Nina and Nestor work through their past and face the future together, neither will survive to see the dawn. So, I don't know about you, but that sounds extremely interesting to me, and I am really excited to read it, so that's why I hauled this one. I also picked up The Ex-Hex, and I am planning to do some Summerween reading soon, and I thought it might be fun to have something that had a fall witchy vibe, but wasn't necessarily horror or thriller, because that's what I typically read during my Summerween weeks. So this is definitely a little witchy romance. Obviously, it's called The Ex-Hex, which implies that there's something going on with some exes and some relationships in this book, but I just thought this one would be super cute to have as a nice palette cleanser if I am reading a lot of horrors or thrillers during Summerween, so you'll definitely be seeing me reading this very soon. And the next book I picked up was Pomegranate, and this poor book, y'all, Look at this cover. It's literally like coming apart up here, which I've never gotten a book from Book Outlet that looked this bad before, to be honest with you, so I can't say if this is typical or not. I've only ordered from Book Outlet. I think this is like the second or third time that I've gotten some books from them, so I was pretty disappointed with the shape that this was in, but at the price, I really didn't want to try to navigate getting an exchange, and honestly, I just feel bad about it, so I'll probably just try to tape it. But I'm pretty sure I heard someone recommending this. I feel like it might have been Jack Edwards, but don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. But I had heard a recommendation and I had saved this on a wish list, and I think I just, honestly, it had slipped my mind or I never came across buying it when looking at the wish list. So when I saw that it was on Book Outlet and I reread the synopsis, I definitely wanted to add it to my cart. And the synopsis says that as she wraps up her 4-year sentence for opioid possession at Oak Hills Correctional Center, Renita Atwater is determined to stay clean and regain custody of her 2 children from her aunts who had been raising them. Leaving behind her lover, Maxine, who has helped to awaken and inspire her, she must face a world of temptations and confront the wounds that refuse to stay buried as she embarks on a journey of healing and autonomy. In lyrical and masterful prose, Helen Elaine Lee paints an unflinching portrait of the devastating effects of addiction, racism, incarceration, and misogyny, and of one woman's fierce determination to choose life. So based on that synopsis, I really wanted to read this, and I do deal with some alcohol and other drug programming and promoting recovery support for students in my current job. So I think this book dealing with addiction and substance misuse really spoke to me and made me want to pick it up and read it. So despite the fact that the book is very damaged, I am very excited to read this one, and hopefully I can do something to preserve it so that it doesn't completely fall apart when I do read it. And next in the box, we've got some fluffy summer romances. So I recently read my first Annabelle Monaghan book, and I believe I have at least one more of these in one of these boxes, but I wanted to pick up a couple more to try to hold on to some summer vibes before the fall does get here. As much as I am nostalgic and I want it to be fall already and I want to light my fall candles and have cool weather, I do also really enjoy summer and quick summer reads. So that's why I picked up both of these, which of course they're contemporary romances and they're set during the summer. There's not too much more to say about that, but I am really excited to read more Annabelle Monaghan. Since I have only read one of her books so far, I'm very excited to get into these. And on that same note, I also picked up a few Carly Fortune books, so only this one was in this first box, but I know I do have at least 2 more. I didn't get these ones from Book Outlet, but I actually have never read Carly Fortune and I had massive FOMO, so you would think it would be wise to just pick up one Carly Fortune book and decide if I liked it, but no, I went ahead and picked up 3 because they were on a good deal. So I haven't read this yet, but same vibes, contemporary romance, typically set in the summer, and I am looking forward to seeing if Carly Fortune is an author that I want to continue to read. And the last book in this box is The Vanishing Half, and this was a book that I hadn't heard of before. I think the cover looked pretty familiar, but I wasn't familiar with the story itself, and I read the synopsis and again just decided that this was one that I really wanted to read, so I'll share that with you. Twins, inseparable as children, ultimately choose to live in 2 very different worlds, one black and one white. The Vignez sisters will always be identical. After growing up together in a small southern black community and running away at age 16, it's not just the shape of their daily lives that is different as adults, it's everything. Their families, their communities, their racial identities. Many years later, one sister lives with her black daughter in the same southern town she once tried to escape. The other secretly passes for white, and her white husband knows nothing of her past. Still, although separated by so many miles and just as many lies, the fates of the twins remain intertwined. What will happen to the next generation when their own daughter's storylines intersect? Weaving together multiple strands and generations, The Vanishing Half is at once a riveting family story and a brilliant exploration of the American history of passing. Looking well beyond issues of race, it considers the lasting influence of the past as it shapes a person's decisions, desires, and expectations. And based on that, I felt like this would be such an interesting read. Again, I do really appreciate literary fiction, especially when it comes to character studies and the ways that people act and understanding why humans choose to do certain things. And I really am interested to see how this book explores identity through the relationship and the lives that these two twins choose to lead that are so vastly different. So once I read that synopsis, I knew for sure that I had to read this book. So I definitely picked that up super quick after reading that. And now we've got our second box, and some of the books that I have on top were the books that I hauled from Barnes & Noble. So in particular, I found these two books on the buy one get one 50% off sale that they always have running with different books at Barnes & Noble. The first one is a compilation of Becky Chambers' Monk and Robot novellas. So this contains a Psalm for the Wild-Built and a Prayer for the Crown-Shy, and these two novellas have been on my TBR for a while. I had them saved on Kindle, and so I was really excited to see them bound into one book together. I've previously read Becky Chambers' series that starts with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I believe the series is called the Wayfarers series, and I absolutely fell in love with Becky Chambers' sci-fi writing, so I was really excited to pick this up because I've been really wanting to read these two novellas that are in here. And then the second book that I picked up on the sale was definitely because of the cover of the book, so I just love this art. It looks so whimsical and interesting, and as soon as I started reading the synopsis, I was like, this sounds bonkers, and I definitely want to read it. So I'm gonna read it to you. The main character's name is Sheshen. So I'm gonna pronounce it Sheshen. I'm not sure if that's what it's meant to be, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it for now. Sheshen is a shapeshifter who happily resides as an amorphous lump at the bottom of a ruined manor. When her rest is interrupted by impolite monster hunters, she constructs a body from the remains of past meals, a metal chain for a backbone, borrowed bones for limbs, and a bear trap as an extra mouth. Which, just that part alone about this character being a lump that then forms a body out of spare parts reminded me of one of my favorite characters from the original Mistborn trilogy. So if you've read that, that's a little Easter egg for you because that definitely drew me in to want to read more about this book. Badly hurt by the hunters, Sheshen's nursed back to health by Homily, a warm-hearted human. Homily is kind and would make a great co-parent, an ideal place to lay Sheshen's eggs so their young can devour Homily from the inside out. But as they grow close, Sheshen realizes that eating her girlfriend isn't an option. Just as Sheshen's about to confess her identity, Homily reveals something else. She's hunting a shape-shifting monster that supposedly cursed her family. Has Sheshen seen it anywhere? Sheshen didn't curse anyone, so now she has to figure out why Homily's twisted family thinks she did. As Sheshen's hunt for the monster becomes increasingly deadly, the bigger challenge remains, learning how to build a life with, rather than in, the woman she loves. So, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a crazy good time to me. This sounds like such a unique concept, and I'm really excited to see how the author brings it all together. I do hope that the main character maybe has some kind of nickname throughout because I feel like I'm stumbling saying Sheshen over and over, but fortunately I'll just be reading it in my head and not out loud, so hopefully that won't be an issue. But I am so excited about this book, and if I am pronouncing that wrong and you recognize that name and there is a different pronunciation, please let me know because that will absolutely drive me up a wall. But this one sounded really fun, so I'm hoping to get into it soon, maybe for Summerween as another little palette cleanser. Now, my next couple books are books that have been a little bit hard for me to get a hold of. So the first one is Small Boat by Vincent Delacroix. And this was shortlisted for the Booker Prize this year, and Jack Edwards talked about this. He read all the books that that were shortlisted, and I think some of the books that were longlisted as well. I'm not sure if he read all of them, but I do know that he read a good amount of the Booker Prize list for this year, and he has historically done that. He was actually a judge for the Booker Prize in the past, so I really like to hear his perspective, especially about the books that do make the list. And so he talked about this book, and I have had my eye on the Booker Prize shortlist because I've been wanting to read more of the books that fall into that category and are nominated for the prize. And this just sounded so interesting to me. I have been trying to find this book in the wild, and I could not find it anywhere. None of the local bookstores that I have had it. Barnes & Noble didn't even have it. So unfortunately, I did have to order this from Amazon, but please know that I tried really hard to find this book out in the wild before I resorted to ordering it from Amazon. But this is one that I've been trying to get my hands on for a while, and I'm really excited to read it. I think it's going to be a really difficult book to read, but also a very good one. So highly recommend looking into that, as well as the other Booker Prize nominees if you haven't done so before. And the next two books I fortunately did find at a local bookstore. I was able to find these at a bookstore called Fable in Knoxville that I have had saved and I've wanted to visit for a very long time. So the whole bookstore is themed with a fantasy theme. So they have art of dragons and it's got a very cozy vibe. And they also have a coffee shop where they sell drinks that are specifically named and created to seem like they're magic potions or other cool fantasy things. So I thought that was really, really neat that they're able to run a bookstore that's themed that way. And I was so excited to finally get to stop by. And I was even more excited because they had physical copies of some books that I have been trying to get a hold of. So the first one is Bloom by Delilah Dawson. And I believe this is a sapphic romance gone horror, which I am extremely excited about. I first heard about this because Ellen Catherine mentioned this book. I think she did read this book, but I can't recall what her review was for this book. But as soon as she mentioned the premise of this book, I was extremely intrigued. So I have been looking for a copy of this for a very long time, and it just so happened that they had it there. So I was so excited to pick this up. And then the second book that I grabbed is Mira Grant's newest release called Overgrowth. And I absolutely love Mira Grant, but I have such a hard time finding any of her books in bookstores. So whether it's local bookstores, Barnes & Noble, etc., I have a very hard time finding physical copies of her books in the store. So I was so thrilled. They actually had both of these books on a display together, and I was like, yep, I'm getting one of each of those because I have such a hard time finding them in the wild. So I picked these up right away, and I'm hoping to get to them soon. Again, these are both great contenders for Summerween, especially Overgrowth, because I am just so obsessed with the sci-fi horror and the way that Mira Grant writes her sci-fi horror. So I definitely want to get into this very soon. But these were two that I was just so excited to find in the wild, and I had to contain my excitement and just grab them off the shelf and go pay. But at least I can tell you guys just how excited I was to actually see them and be able to purchase these at a local bookstore. It really made me so happy. So I'm very excited to add these to my TBR. And up next we have the other two Carly Fortune books that I promised were in the book haul. So I'm not sure why they got separated from the first one, but again, just wanted to really cling to that summer feeling of being on vacation and reading a summer romance. So that's why I picked these up, and hopefully I will like Carly Fortune's writing because now I have 3 of her books. And while we're talking about popular romance books, I also picked up my first Lynn Painter book. So I've not read any Lynn Painter before, and I know that Better Than the Movies is very popular. I believe our protagonist is obsessed with rom-coms, and I think that's such a cute premise that is how she kind of approaches her relationships. And so I think this is just going to be such a cute read, and I know so many people love this, so I'm really excited to read this one. And I mean, look how cute this cover art is. It has like all the iconic rom-com scenes, so I think this one's gonna be a lot of fun. And if it's not, at least I cured my FOMO, and I know that Lynn Painter's not for me if I don't enjoy it. But I'm really looking forward to reading this and finally knowing what everybody's talking about. This next one that I picked up was a bit of a wild card. So this is This Will Be Fun by E.B. Asher. I hadn't seen this book before I was browsing Book Outlet for my order, and the cover just kind of drew me in. It seemed like it was going to be kind of a like fairy tale, cozy fantasy that seemed really fun to me. I really enjoyed reading a book. I think the author was Peter S. Beagle. It wasn't The Last Unicorn. It's a different one about like dragon slayers, and it kind of had that like Monty Python silly like fantasy romance vibe to it. Very traditional fairy tale feeling. So just based on this, I'm kind of hoping that this has a similar vibe where it's just kind of like silly, goofy. Think like Apprentice to the Villain or Assistant to the Villain in that series. That's kind of what I'm hoping for out of this, but I will read the synopsis for you. Everyone in Mithria knows the story of how best friends Beatrice and Elowen, handsome ex-bandit Claire, and valiant leader Galwell the Great defended the realm from darkness. It's a tale beloved by all, except the heroes. They haven't spoken in a decade, devastated by what their quest cost them. But when they all receive an invitation to the Queen of Mithria's wedding, it's a summons they can't refuse, and a reunion for the ages. With Claire secretly not over his long-ago fling with Beatrice, Beatrice fighting the guilt she feels over how everything ended, Elowen unprepared for the return of her ex-love, the cunning Vandra, and all of them lost without Galwell. And if reuniting with former friends and lovers wasn't perilous enough, dark forces from their past have also returned. Dusting off old weapons and old instincts, Beatrice, Claire, and Elowen will face undead nemesis, crystal caves, enchanted swords, coffee shops, games of magical truth or dare, and hardest of all, their past, rife with wounds never healed and romances never forgotten. This time around, will their story end in happily ever after? I mean, doesn't that sound like a fun, silly time? I think it sounds really fun, so I hope it lives up to its title and this will be fun because I'm looking forward to it. Now, The Bee Sting is another book that I've had on my radar. It was noted as one of the 10 best books of 2023, and I've definitely had it saved on a wish list, but I just never got around to purchasing it or reading it, so this is one that I've been interested in reading. I won't read the entire synopsis on the back of the book, but basically it deals with a bunch of things that have kind of gone wrong, and the question is posed of if you wanted to change the story, how far back would you need to go? Does it all come down to a bee sting that ruined someone's wedding? And I just thought that concept was really, really interesting, and I think that this is gonna really pose like a different perspective as it looks at different timelines and things kind of falling apart, and if it would be possible to change that, and if you could change it, would you, and how far back would you need to go? So this is just one that I've always kind of had my eye on, and seeing it on Book Outlet, I knew that I definitely wanted to pick it up. Now, this book is definitely another case of FOMO, and that's Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. This is definitely one that I have seen a lot, heard talked about a lot, although I haven't paid much attention to what anyone has said about the book, just because I've been interested in picking it up myself, so I didn't want to have any spoilers, but I am really excited to read this. I was a really big fan of Ninth House, and I felt like this kind of gave a similar vibe to that. For example, this has to do with Starling House, which is a literal house, and kind of the secrets that have been buried within it. So I think this will be a really fun read, and I'm hoping it gives me the same vibes as Ninth House, but I'm trying not to put too high of expectations on it. I also picked up The Lion Women of Tehran, which is another book where I read the synopsis and just felt like I absolutely had to read it. So I'll share the synopsis with you as well. In 1950s Tehran, 7-year-old Ellie lives in grand comfort until the untimely death of her father, forcing her and her mother to move to a tiny home downtown. Lonely and bearing the brunt of her mother's endless grievances, Ellie dreams of having a friend to alleviate her isolation. Luckily, on the first day of school, she meets Homa, a kind, passionate girl with a brave and irrepressible spirit. Together, the two girls play games, learn to cook in the stone kitchen of Homa's warm home, wander through colorful stalls of the Grand Bazaar, and share their ambitions for becoming lion women. But their happiness is disrupted when Ellie and her mother are afforded the opportunity to return to their previous lifestyle. As Ellie enjoys her new popularity at the best girls' school in Iran, her memories of Homa begin to fade. Years later, however, Homa's sudden reappearance in Ellie's privileged world alters the course of both of their lives. Together, the two young women come of age and pursue their own goals for meaningful futures. But as the political turmoil in Iran builds to a breaking point, one earth-shattering betrayal will have enormous consequences. So I thought that this book would be really interesting, and honestly, based on that synopsis, it just became a must-read for me. So I'm very excited to read this one and see how this story unfolds and really explore the lives of these two women and how they're impacted by their relationship with each other, but also with the world that they live in and the climate of what is happening around them. And we're getting close to our final two books. So the first of those is Hello Stranger by Catherine Sinner. I recently read my first Catherine Sinner book. It was The Love Haters, and I was so thankful to receive that as an ARC to read and review through NetGalley. And I really didn't go in with any expectations. I knew it was a contemporary romance, but having never read Catherine Sinner, I wasn't sure if I would like her writing or not like her writing, and I was really pleasantly surprised by The Love Haters, even though there have been a lot of mixed reviews about that book online. So I really enjoyed it, and because of that, I wanted to pick up Hello Stranger, which is another contemporary romance by Catherine Sinner. And in this story, our main character has an issue where they are unable to recognize people's faces. So when they meet someone, if they see them again, they won't automatically be able to recognize them. And I thought that this concept would be really interesting because it must be difficult to find someone and fall in love with them and date if you initially have a very hard time remembering what a person looks like and being able to see that person and get to know them, because most people are probably offended if you see them after having spent time with them and don't recognize them right off the bat. So after enjoying my first Catherine Sinner, it was a no-brainer for me that I wanted to pick up this one as well. So that's why I added this to the TBR. And then lastly, I have another book that's been on my wish list for a very long time, and that is Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. This went on my wish list a long time ago, and I definitely put off reading it or purchasing it because there were some very mixed reviews about this online, but I just decided that I wanted to form my own opinion about it. So since I saw that this was on Book Outlet and it was only $5.99, I wanted to go ahead and pick it up so I could read it and decide how I feel about it for myself, because honestly, revisiting the synopsis, it still sounds like a really interesting book to me, and I'm trying to be less influenced by the booktube and kind of book talk space, because I find that a lot of the books that people rave about I don't enjoy, and a lot of the books that have mixed reviews, I find that I do enjoy them, or I interpret them a little bit differently than maybe some other people that are not enjoying them do. So I didn't want to count this book out until I read it myself and formed my own opinion. So that's why I decided to pick this up, and I'm gonna just go in with no expectations and hopefully it won't let me down. But that is the final book of my book haul. So obviously I've done some damage. I've added a lot of books to the TBR, but I think that these were all really great additions. Maybe I went a little overboard buying 3 Carly Fortune books, but other than that, I feel really good about all of these, and I'm really excited to read them, and I'm hoping that they will all be really great books and that I will enjoy them. So definitely keep an eye on this space, especially for my Summerween reading, because some of these are definitely going to go into that rotation. That way, if you want to hear how I like them or a little bit more about the books, you can see my review for those in my Summerween reading vlog, and then of course the rest will continue to pop up throughout my reading for the year. But that's everything for me in this book haul, so thank you so much for joining me today. Let me know if you've hauled any exciting books or if there are any coming out soon that you're really looking forward to. And again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a great one. Bye!